Hello, everyone. Today I will be talking about all the books that I read in February. Overall, I read books with an average rating of 3.75 stars out of 5, which I think is a really good reading month. Not as good as as January was, but that's okay. And I will start off. I started the month with a banger, also to my shame. The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I have to admit that I hadn't read this before. I have had the box set on my shelf since 2012, I think, pretty much. So I have seen all the movies, and I remember that I tried reading the first book, but I think that was a time in my life where I had like a weird reading thing. And I remember reading this and kind of getting to the part where they go to the capital in the train, and then I was just like, okay, I'm kind of bored, and I already know all of this because I've just seen the movie. So I never picked this up, and I never finished reading it. So this time around, I have resolved that I will read this entire trilogy in. So I will read the second book in March, and then the last one in April, and then continue on to the next two books, to the follow-ups that came out more recently. So this was my first time fully reading The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I mean, the books are known. They have been very successful for more than a decade and fully deserve their place in pop culture in my opinion. I think Katniss in this book, there are times when she's unlikable, but that just makes her so much more real. I think she's a great character to be written. I really like that we get to see everything that happens to her through her eyes, and we only have her limited perspective of what's going on. I also like kind of the changes that they made in the movie to kind of give the viewer some of the information that Katniss provides in the book. Yeah, I basically couldn't stop reading this. The only reason I could stop was that I already knew the story, and I was actually surprised how good of an adaptation the movie was, because basically everything that happens here happens in the movie as well. Um, yeah, so I really, really, really like this. I think everyone should read this. If for some reason you haven't read this before, as I did, you should definitely give it a try. I think this is also a book, like, to me, what surprised me a little bit was how well it holds up. Because this is more than 10 years old. And I know from more recently trying uh, that a lot of books from that era can read very like cringe nowadays, and you would like a lot of the books that were published then wouldn't be published the same now, and be successful, but this one certainly does. I think, yeah, the writing style is accessible. Something keeps happening all the time. I have so many questions about all of this, and what made this great for me as well is that the last time that I had seen the movie and like been in touch with this world and story had definitely been over 10 years ago. So this was the perfect start to February for me, and I am very excited to dive into Catching Fire this month, which I will pick up very soon. Then I continued with The Bird's Nest by Shirley Jackson, which is pretty short. It's a story about a young woman, Elizabeth Richmond, who kind of, over the course of the book, we discover that she has multiple personalities. There's, I think, four of them. Um, and this is kind of. So I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I think it was really well done. I think Shirley Jackson is really good at writing just like making the average not seem special, but kind of she has an access to average situations and maybe like your run of the mill people, um, that makes them very interesting literary subjects, I think. So with this one, I really enjoyed kind of as a reader also not really knowing what's going on. I mean, at first you have more of a clue than the characters do because none of the characters are aware that there are multiple personalities, least of all Elizabeth herself. And then she kind of goes to a therapist, who, like, a part of the book is written in his, like, the notes, or like the oh my god, I can only think of the word in German. So kind of the report that he writes about Elizabeth and about her visits. The character of the therapist was kind of weird. Um, Definitely a man, and this, I don't remember when this was written, but it was definitely in the 60s or something. Let me quickly check. Of course, 54. So in the 50s, which of course there was a very different, like, image of, like, there was a different ideal of women, of men that was dominant in culture and society, and this is kind of reflected here, but also like addressed and reflected upon, which I really liked. Um, yeah, I had a good time with this. I can definitely appreciate what Shirley Jackson is doing in this book. I have enjoyed some of her short stories more than this, but I am keen on trying more of her writing and reading more of her writing. I think the top of my list at the moment is The Haunting of Hell House. So you should definitely give Shirley Jackson a try. And yeah, this is also a great book to pick up, I think, and try reading at one point. Then I continued with my reread of Lord of the Rings with Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. I give this 4 out of 5 stars. It's my second reread. I read this back in 2020 when I first started reading adult fantasy and thought, okay, I have to kind of have the basics and kind of the basis, the foundation of modern fantasy being Lord of the Rings. I should read this sometime. And I reread it again. I really enjoyed this. Um, One thing that, like, I kind of have an issue with is that there's like such a division between all of the other characters and then Sam and Frodo going to Mordor and like encountering Gollum and then like taking him with them, or basically him guiding them to the place that they have to go. Um, I really liked seeing Gollum. I I think he makes a great character, and like there's basically whenever Gollum's in the picture, you're like you don't really know what to expect because you can't expect anything when Gollum is there. Um, yeah, so I definitely enjoyed this. I also really like that the chapter about Helm's Deep is just one chapter and doesn't take up that much time. Yeah, and I will be continuing with Return of the King this month as well. So this was a great reread. The next book I read was Jade War by Fonda Lee. I give this a full 5 out of 5 stars. I was actually kind of surprised because this is like a middle book in a trilogy, and usually those can be a little rough, but this had none of that. Um, I like. I even like this more than the first one. I think it expanded on the world a lot more. We like move from Kcon, which is where the first book is mainly set, to other places in the world, Espenia, where one of the characters goes, and then kind of lives. And we also see like a Kekanese society abroad, so like a community of expats living on in Espenia, who are of Kekkonese descent, and then kind of have this immigrant community, which I really liked, and kind of liked seeing how some customs carry over, how certain customs and traditions are adapted to fit more into the domestic society there. And I also really like all of the political machination-y stuff, all the political intrigue, and like the different factions kind of meeting, colliding with each other. I mean, it's called Jade War, so you know that they're like the conflict between the gangs in Janloon kind of expands and is extrapolated to an more international setting. And I think Fonnelly did this very successfully in this book. I won't go into detail, but the cover that was chosen here, like if you don't have any context, it's not that special, but with the context, this is a great cover. And I really, really, really enjoyed this book. I like all the characters. I like the intricacies of the connections between them, and I'm very excited and also maybe a little bit worried about reading the third book and the final book. Because yeah, I'm fond of all of these characters, and I don't want anything bad happening to them. But I know that Fonnelly won't back down. Like if it's necessary for the story, then it will happen, and I have to prepare myself for that. So, but yeah, I'm definitely also like reading the third book, Jade Legacy, in March this month, and we'll wrap this up. And I still cannot believe that I haven't read these in so long, and this will probably happen on and on, over and over again, because I have so many books on my shelf, and a lot of them I'm looking forward to, but this one is overdue, like this trilogy. And if you haven't picked this up, and the premise sounds intriguing, basically Jade War. Like, Jade is the foundation of the magic system, and then there's only one country that produces jade, or like where jade can be mined, so they kind of have a monopoly in the international scope of things, and of course everyone wants to get in on the deal. So that's the basic premise, and things go from there. There are jade gangs in one of the country that produces them, and then they are kind of in charge of all the jade trade, and have to contend with each other and also more global players that come in and kind of demand being introduced into the trade. So yeah, this, I just love it. It's really good. The next book I read was Vater Unser by Angela Lehner, which is a book by an Austrian author. I got this from the library. I had read about this in another nonfiction book about like redoing the what is it, the canon of literary works, especially the ones that are read in schools. So one of the books that author, I think that was Muss ich das gelesen haben, by, I don't remember her name. Shit. I will insert a cover here or here. So basically that book talked about which books to read to substitute for other books that are currently in the curriculum, and Vater Unser was one of the books that she recommended for basically having unreliable narrators, and just being a lot more contemporary, and also maybe, pertinent to issues that are currently going on. So this is by an Austrian author, and it's about the main character and narrator is a person who, when we meet her in the first chapter, she is being transported by the police, handcuffed to a psychiatric hospital. And when she's there, she meets with one of the doctors and kind of talks about why she is there, and what is going on in her life. Her brother is also a patient in that hospital, and yeah, basically you follow her and she kind of tells you what's going on. And then as you move further and further along in the story, a lot of inconsistencies crop up. And yeah, I basically overall I enjoyed the story. It's very contemporary German language fiction, in my opinion, so it kind of fits the bill for a lot of trends that are prevalent in German language fiction. This was also like, I think if I was asked, it would be easy to classify, like to note that this is specifically Austrian fiction. It's also set in Vienna, so that might also give you a clue. I think the main character, was deeply unlikable, which is sort of the point of the story. Yeah, I think certain parts kind of wore me down a little bit, and I was like, oh, do we have to go over this again? But it was interesting enough to keep me engaged, and the very end, like, approaching the end and the climax was, I think, my favorite part of the book, but then the end kind of is so open-ended that I was a little let down, but that's also very typical of contemporary German language fiction. Um yeah, but I'm not sure how I feel about that. In this book, I kind of wish that there would have been more of a closed end, but with the story in mind, it also doesn't make sense because we have that main character who, like, is in a psychiatric hospital, and kind of has a lot of issues that she has to work on but doesn't really. So it wouldn't really make sense to have a closed end. So yeah, basically a good read. If the premise sounds intriguing, definitely give it a read. It's also pretty short. The next book I read was Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinneman. I read this for a book club, and I gave it 3.75 out of 5 stars. I really like the premise of this. In the first chapter, you're told that there's an alien invasion and the aliens are installing a dungeon on Earth, and that there are openings everywhere on Earth on the surface that you can enter the dungeon, and the main character, Carl, is outside with his ex-girlfriend's cat because she jumped out of the window, and then basically stumbles into this dungeon, and then it's about exploring the dungeon, kind of getting to know what they have to do, kind of getting some back lore and backdrop information about the system that is behind the dungeon, and then also like various item descriptions of things they pick up, things they loot from from monsters that they defeat, and stuff like this, and basically just a progression through this dungeon. Based on all of that, I really liked it. There's a lot of humorous takes in this book. To me, the humor wasn't that much of a hit. Like, I could have done without it. It made it pretty fun, but a lot of the jokes, or like a lot of the ludicrous things that happen in here, I think were a little bit like misogynistic. And some, like, at some points I was just like, why does this need to be in here? For example, some of the like higher level bosses that are in some of the rooms, I was just questioning whether, like, I just didn't see the point. Is my yeah, my thing about this. Overall, I enjoyed this enough to definitely want to continue. I kind of I just want to see. I want to get to the bottom of this. I want to know what like all of the alien thing in the back is, how all of the other like participants in the dungeon, like the mobs or the tutorial guides, how all of them factor in to this, and kind of also, I also want to see if Carl and Princess Donut the cat kind of develop enough for, not develop enough, but if they develop further than they do in this, because they don't really develop, in my opinion. Yeah, but I already have the second book, and I am planning to continue reading this series and see where it goes. But I mean, this has been hyped a lot recently. It has gotten like this traditional hardback release, even though it was self-published before. And I mean, I definitely see where the hype is coming from. I think this was a very quick read, and it was like, it was fun. Despite sometimes being ludicrous to an extent that I couldn't stomach. And I thought it was a little bit annoying, but yeah, I could see past it, and definitely when I finished reading this book, I was like, okay, I have to pick up the next one because I want to see how it continues in the future and in future floors of the dungeon. And then I also read two other books that I don't have in physical copy. The first one was Geschichten aus der Heimat by Dmitry Glukovsky, who is a Russian author. I also know that this book doesn't exist in an English translation. I got it from the library. It was basically a collection of short stories that were published after 2022 by a Russian author. So it's kind of about Russia, about like the political system, the economic system, a lot of things, but it was suffused with like sci-fi elements, and like there were some stories that were like alien-y, but then a lot of others that also really didn't make use of any of those sci-fi tropes. So overall, this reminded me of The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, just because both of them are basically independent short stories, but they interconnect, and you kind of see a bigger picture once you read all of them. Yeah, I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't bad, but I think my main issue was probably the translation. I always struggle with reading SFF books in German. I'm not sure how it would be in the original Russian because I don't read that. Yeah, but I don't know. The writing style kind of not rubbed me the wrong way, but it just wasn't what I enjoyed. So it might have been the translation. It also might have been the original. I couldn't tell you. I liked the idea, but a lot of the characters were just very far removed, and I couldn't really access them in a way that I wanted. And I don't know, the subject matter of a lot of the stories, even though I know what the author's trying to do and I appreciate them for what it is, I had just expected something more, a little bit more daunting. I want to say, even though that also, if you like think about, okay, this author can't live in Russia anymore because is he's critical of Putin and his regime. So is that the right thing to say? I wouldn't know. But I hope that you don't take it the wrong way. But to me, I just had expected something a little different from this collection, so I was a little bit disappointed. But if you think it is interesting, I think it's definitely still worth a read, and I don't regret reading it. And then the last book that I read was actually kind of a novella. It was Automatic Noodle by Annalee Newitz. And I listened to this on audiobook when I wasn't feeling great. So I basically lay in bed and then listened to this, and it was the perfect book for that. It's about a bunch of robots who are reawakened after having been in stasis for a period of time. And they originally ran a noodle shop, I think, and then they kind of start thinking, okay, maybe it would be a good idea for us to start running this noodle shop on our own without having someone to back us up. And then they kind of do that, and then they start running this noodle shop, and there's a little bit of strife between them, and like with outside sources, there's like a hate campaign uh, of people saying, okay, we don't want food from robots, we want food prepared by actual human beings. But they kind of navigate all of that, and then yeah, become successful for, more or less. And it's I found it really nice. I like it was the perfect thing to read at on the day that I read it, because I didn't pay, like sometimes I drifted off because I was laying in bed. I was sick and sometimes I fell a little bit asleep and I drifted. But it was perfectly fine to just come back after having missed a few minutes of the audiobook. Um, and I thought in the end that this was a really like feel good uh, novella, and a heartwarming story, I felt. And I gave it 3.75 stars out of 5. Um, yeah, and basically just enjoyed it. Yeah, so this was my wrap up of February. These were all the books that I read. I am already excited for the books that I will be picking up this month, a lot of which will be the next or final parts in the series that I'm reading currently. So, if you have read any of the books that I mentioned, let me know in the comments, and let me know what you thought about them. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye!